Evening, guys. I'll give it here a minute or two to let everybody come on in and get settled down for the weekly stream. I got a few things to talk about. They're not what you would normally expect out of this stream, but then again, where do my streams usually go? To the most random places you could think of. This week was pretty uneventful. Nothing per se on my end. Just another week at work. Uh, no call outs for the whole cert thing. Cert's going to be dying down here with the call outs during winter, unless things get really bad, like, ice storms or something causing power outages and such. But tonight I want to run through at least two things. I titled this video, Lights Are On But Nobody's Home. And the reason I titled it that is because I kind of want to talk about just how zoned out people are that I'm noticing just in anything really, like driving, going to the store, just not paying attention to anything. And there's no clear reason why. Like for instance, I've run across a lot of people on the road, and this is part of my road rage issue. You guys know I have a bit of a road rage problem. Is the constant braking when there's nobody in front of you for at least 4 to 5 car lengths. That's one thing that pisses me off. And then I'll go to pass somebody, and they're not on their phone. They're not doing anything. They're like doing 15 under, and they're hitting the brakes every 2 seconds. Why is this happening? What are you people distracted by? Are you scared to drive? Are people just scared to do anything? Like, there's a speed limit for a reason. At least do the speed limit. Meanwhile, I'm over here doing 10, 15 over. And I'll freely admit that. And I get past half the fucking time by some other people. But my point is, why are people just putzing along? Every day going to work, people will be doing 30 in a 45. And it's not because, like, morning traffic or nothing. And then other days, they'll be speeding by doing double my speed limit. And I'm already going fast enough. I don't know. Is it people have lost their awareness? Not just on the road. I've noticed it in stores too. You'll be standing there waiting to get to something on the shelf, and people just stand there. They don't give a fuck. I don't know if it's that they don't know you're there, or if you do mention something, they look at you like you're at fault. Like, this is just at the grocery store. Like, get your shit, move on, or stand aside to where you're not in people's way. It is I don't know if you call it situational awareness or self-awareness. It's not there. Um, like, they're not aware of what they're doing in life anymore. Um, RZ, I'm not just talking like going to work. Like, oh, I'm not expecting people to rush to go to work. I'm just saying like they don't they're not understanding the speed limit, they're not understanding how to drive. They're not just going with the flow of traffic. It's like they're off in their own world and they're going so slow that they're almost intoxicated on something. People have lost that fire in the belly feeling. Uh, well, I don't know if it's even that. And that's another thing I wanted to talk about too. Now, thank you for mentioning that. Is um, people not wanting to work with this whole EBT thing. Um, People have lost, I guess you could say, their pride in their work, or they've lost the why they do it. I don't know if you want to call it motivation, but like RZ just said, the fire in the belly feeling. So they've lost motivation to go to their job. They've just lost motivation in life. Like I've been in those dark places where you just lose motivation for everything. And I've had long episodes of that. I've had short episodes of that. Um, Anytime people hear me say that I don't drink or smoke or do any of that, they're always shocked. Like, okay, I may be some goody two shoes by not doing that, but um, they're always shocked. Like, how do you get through life without doing that? It's like, yeah, that's the part of the fight of life is you trudge through it. Even when it gets hard, you just give yourself one more day, give yourself one more day, see what it's like tomorrow, kind of thing. Um, don't give up. And some people don't understand that, I guess. Uh, RZ says maybe the jab. Well, I started to notice the change after the jabs. It's not everybody. That's the thing is I'm only noticing it in some people. But those some people are so bad in terms of they're either zoned out on the road, zoned out in the stores, or zoned out just in life in general. There is no situation that they're not zoned out. It's like they're high or intoxicated. I don't know what it is. Something's not clicking in their heads. Medically speaking, maybe early stages of failure to thrive. What what exactly does that mean? If you got some medical background, explain that. Um, like just lost drive for living life. Um, Everyone's blaming Trump or the whatever for the EBT stuff. It's not Trump and it's not the president. It's Congress. One, because they're shut down, and two, they refuse to fund it, which is due to the shutdown. So it's a cascading effect. Um, the thing is, the people don't understand this is what they voted for. They voted these people in, or they let this happen, and all they have to do is blame themselves. Um, I don't know if it's. I don't want to call it a victim mentality. Um, I can't quite put my finger on what to call it. It's something that's it's a different word for a victim mentality. Self-inflicted, victim of own circumstance. They bitch, but the thing is, they bitch uh, about something they did to themselves. It's self-inflicted. I don't know how else to describe it. Um, they did it to themselves with the EBT, the food stamps, and then they act like, "Oh, there's no way out." Well, how the hell have I been doing it on a just about $40,000 a year job and insurance, car payments, taxes, uh, various other things. You know, a couple $100 flashlights just recently. um, I make it work, and I work. I go to work 5 days a week. That's why I don't do my stream every night anymore, because I'm so damn tired from working and doing at least something. It's not the most glamorous job, but at least I'm doing something. So if I lost let's say I had EBT, if I lost EBT, I have a way out. Like, these people don't understand that you can go get a job and have some income. Now, Trump says we're having the best economy that we've ever had. I don't necessarily believe that. Um, just yet, anyway. When milk is below $1 and gas is 2.50 or $1.10 or something around there, like it was in the early 2000s, shit, then we'll talk and say that, you know, stuff's, the economy's back. If when a household can run on one income, then I'll say the economy's fixed. But we're not there yet. And I'm holding out hope, hoping that Trump's got some bigger plan. Um, I can tell things have slowed down in terms of inflation, but it's still going up. It's not like I wake up tomorrow and shit's like 50% more. It just might be a little bit. And then you got to worry about like hitting certain things when it goes on sale or something like that, like for instance, guys know I run on Diet Coke. I always watch for the sales on that. You just got to be aware of that. Um, so, um, so people not being aware of their surroundings and just kind of muddling through life. Um, the whole proud to be an American uh, motivation, built in America, by Americans, for Americans type thing, has all but died off at this point. I mean, there's patriots out there, but there's no opportunities to um, make a big difference. The companies are not there anymore. The thing is, like, I'm looking at my area, Detroit here. Okay, we'll just say Metro Detroit. You guys know where I'm just about anyway. Um, It's all buildings. There's no new restaurants opening up. There's no new factories, or no companies are willing to put the money forward to hire the people, to pay the people a decent wage. You can chalk this up to anything in terms of greed, or you know, pick something, pick a reason. Um, we're I don't want to say the economy's dead, but it's not alive like it used to be. Um, Meanwhile, we've got the Arabs taking over, and I'm going to say that. Okay, they've told us to our face. It's just like the Art of War, the book Art of War that I have sitting here on the desk. When your enemy tells you who they are, believe them. When they say they want to take over America, believe them. Like, why do we have fighting age men coming over the border and no women and children? I mean, not anymore, but you know what I'm saying. Why do we have illegals here that are fighting age rather than families coming through like Ellis Island like my ancestors did? They want to take over. They don't want to assimilate. They want to change our way of life to their way of life from the shithole they came from. Meanwhile, you got Joe Schmo and just your average day Joe just at the dollar store, the grocery store, and or driving on the road, just muddling through life, not aware of what's going on. Or if they are aware, they just don't give a fuck. Why is it that people don't give a fuck anymore? Start giving a fuck, people. This is your life. You only get one of them. If you don't like your circumstances, change them. People say for me to move out of the city. Well, yeah, I can change my circumstances. If I really wanted to, we can up and move. Would it be a smart move right now? No, but I could change my circumstances. Um, if I wanted to, but I don't want to because that would be dumb financially when I have a paid off house and, a half paid off truck. I'm holding steady on my bills and I'm actually putting a little bit away each paycheck. I'm not sinking, you know? Why would we take out a loan for a mortgage when my house is paid off? All I got to worry about is taxes. It just wouldn't be smart. So I'll put up with living in the city. And in the meantime, while I'm in the city, I will make the best of what my circumstances are. Is everything the best here right now? No. But I'm not going to let that stop me. I'm going to still go to work. I'm still going to go, not following the system, because I'm aware of what the system is, as you guys know, with all the years of the dissection of the keyboards and all that. I know what the system is. I saw the dark side. And I'm where I'm at because of it. Um, I'm not in a mental state of despair because of it, because I pulled myself out of that. But I'm not falling into the system because the system tells me this is what I'm supposed to do. I am now aware that I am in charge of my own destiny. Um, and people today have lost sight of that. They think that they're not in control of their own lives. The reason they give a fuck about Palestine, the reason they give a fuck about EBT, the reason they think their life is over because of these things, or pick a reason. I just threw two out there just now. Pick a reason. The reason they blame something for their circumstances is because they feel that they're not in control of their own destiny. They would rather play the victim card. Dana B says people need to fight their victim mentality. Yes. Okay. When I have a dark, I don't know what you want to call it. People have referred to it as a dark night of the soul, where you are in the most dark thoughts of your mind, and it goes places that you don't want it, but it can or cannot end you. Let me put it that way for politically correct terms, if you know what I mean. If you let it take control of you, you will eventually succumb and end up taking your own existence if you put two and two together there. Okay. Um, where I've understood it as, this is not my thoughts. Okay. People don't understand that they are not their thoughts. They think that their thoughts are their own, when really their thoughts are just fleeting thoughts. I don't know what else to call them other than thoughts. Um, Fleeting ideas that come from some place that is not their own. You can call that demonic. You can call that outside influence. You can call that social manipulation, propaganda, whatever. Point is, because people have succumbed to it and just don't understand what it is or have given up the fight, that's the reason they're in the situations they're in. Where, um, before I continue, I'm going to say, since the internet, I'm going to blame the internet for most of this. Because prior to the internet, I will say from the time I was born, 94, to anything prior to me being born, so 94 and earlier, uh, people didn't have that mental detachment that we're seeing. Uh, they were able to control their thoughts. They were able to be aware of their surroundings and not be influenced. Because all they had was the life that they experienced in person. Yeah, there was the internet, but the internet back then was not what it is today. I wouldn't even call it social media either. It's a whole different entity than what it was back then. Where back then, as you know, I'm sure if you're old enough, would understand that um, it was more of a search engine where you could look just random things up and you get articles or newspapers and just generic things. It wasn't as involved as it is today. The internet is a search engine, but it's evolved to a point where it's all consuming. And people need to understand that they are not that. They are people. They are not the internet. They are not the propaganda they hear. They are not the identity that you hear about Free Palestine or BLM or Antifa. That is not your identity. Okay? And people have lost the concept of they are their own person. They preach saying, "Oh, my rights," or "I'm an individual person," when you have no idea what an individual person is. Uh, you don't know anything other than the certain life you're living right now because you live within the internet, you live within the propaganda, you have bought the narrative. There's a difference between, okay, look at the movie The Matrix. Neo went into the Matrix, but he knew what the Matrix was. Of course, after he woke up. But after he woke up, he still remained in the Matrix, per se. And I'll get technical with the franchise later. But point is, he was aware of the system and still experienced the system and moved within it. He didn't say, oh, well, if that's what it is, I quit and then remained outside the Matrix. Uh, I forget the guy's name. The guy that was on the computer that could read past the numbers. Somebody help me. Either way, um, he wasn't outside the Matrix all the time. He was aware that there was an outside. He still went back in and lived a life, if you could say, or um, really, I've never seen that. You've never seen The Matrix. Wow. Watch it. Be charming. You're kidding. You've never seen the. What? I'm talking about The Matrix. The movie The Matrix. Neo. The one. Red pill, blue pill. Okay. Keanu from the very from his early days. Thank you, Dana B. I'm glad I'm not. I swear, I was starting to think I was witnessing a Mandela effect there. Really, you guys? Oh my god! Put a one in chat if you have not seen The Matrix. I'm sorry I'm going off on a tangent here, but I'm shocked that none of you, at least none of you that have talked here. Yeah, Bushcraft, you are the Matrix, Bushcraft. Like that's one of those movies that is like if you have not seen The Matrix, you are not human. um, so anyway, Neo went into the Matrix. He knew about the system. He knew that it was all a program, but he still went in it, and he, oh, for the lack of better words, he broke the system. But he still had to experience the system to live. Where people nowadays experience the system and just let it consume them. So, um, there's the choice, the famous scene where Morpheus gives Neo the red pill or the blue pill. I think it's the red pill that wakes you up and shows you the real system and that you're really being controlled by it. And then the blue pill puts you to sleep and you forget everything happened. You just go back to your normal life. Um, a lot of people are taking the blue pill and just going back to sleep. There are more people taking the red pill than there used to be, but still not enough taking the red pill, if you can believe that. And then there's now a concept of a black pill where it's not actual part of the Matrix movies, but black pill is where you just don't believe anything and it is what it is. It's kind of like atheism, if you will. Like all things are bad. Doesn't matter what you choose. Watt says, if the people aren't aware, they will never know. You can't know of the Matrix if you're not aware of it. Exactly. I mean, literally talking about the movie and then literally talking about the system that we live in. There's two different matrices, I guess you could say. So, I guess my point, or long story short here, is it comes down to one question. Why are people unaware? That has a lot of answers to it. But the question is, why are they unaware when they already know there's another option? Because I would say more people know that there's a different choice. Why did people choose to remain asleep still? When they know that the system is fucking them over, they still remain asleep. It's not that they're not awake. They know there's another world out there, a world of awakened where you know that the system's fucking you over. It's like the scene in the Matrix. Red pill, blue pill. Why did people choose the blue pill? Is it that they couldn't handle it? Is it that they okay, so Thompson says it's easier to stay quiet. So then that leads to the question, why has the human race, for the most part anyway, not everybody, as you know, but for the most part, why do people choose the easy way? Is it that they don't want to get their heads chopped off? Which this leads to another question, and you can relate this biblically. Jesus said you will be persecuted for my name, or for being a Christian, whatever way you want to put it. Why is it that so few people crumble under the weight of the system? Or, I'm sorry, so many people crumble under the weight of the system, and so few are willing to stick their necks out and say, screw it, that's what I believe, and I'm willing to die for it. But yet, the same people that will follow the system will fight so hard to keep the system going. Just like they mentioned in the Matrix. The people will fight to keep their reality going, even though their reality that is going is the wrong reality. I'm looking something up here. Hold on. Where is it? Damn it! Hold on.
Bored. We're all bored now. But has it ever occurred to you, Wally, that the process that creates this boredom that we see in the world now may very well be a self-perpetuating, unconscious form of brainwashing created by a world totalitarian government based on money, and that all of this is much more dangerous than one thinks, and it's not just a question of individual survival, Wally, but that somebody who's bored is asleep, and somebody who's asleep will not say no? See, I keep meeting these people. I mean, just a few days ago, I met this man whom I greatly admire. He's a Swedish physicist, Gustav Bjornstrand, and he told me that he no longer watches television, he doesn't read newspapers, and he doesn't read magazines. He's completely cut them out of his life because he really does feel that we're living in some kind of Orwellian nightmare now, and that everything that you hear now contributes to turning you into a robot.
That's basically Neo waking up in the Matrix and understanding the system. That's where I'm at. Not that I don't watch TV or, whatever else he mentioned that guy doesn't do, but point is, I'm aware of the system.
And when I was at Findhorn, I met this extraordinary English tree expert who had devoted his life to saving trees. Just got back from Washington, lobbying to save the redwoods. He's 84 years old. He always travels with a backpack because he never knows that they want to leave but never do. And I said, oh, yes. And he said, why do you think they don't leave? I gave him different banal theories. He said, oh, I don't think it's that way at all. He said, I think that New York is the new model for the new concentration camp, where the camp has been built by the inmates themselves, and the inmates are the guards, and they have this pride in this thing they've built. They've built their own prison, and so they exist in a state of schizophrenia, where they are both guards and prisoners, and as a result, they no longer have, having been lobotomized, the capacity to leave the prison they've made or to even see it.
That is a liberal. That is a Democrat. Does that make sense? I cannot play the rest of it, otherwise it'll cut me off here, if it hasn't already. That's from a film from 1981, My Dinner with Andre. So look that up if you want to watch that whole clip. Now, that is the definition of what people are these days, and why people cannot see the Matrix, cannot see, or refuse to see, because they're so busy defending the thing that they built that they refuse to see it. So I have not seen that full movie, but yeah. Kind of reminds me of like one of those movies from with who is it? Charles Branson? Um I forget the name. Death Wish. Those kinds of 1980s movies. It had that kind of grainy look to it. So, in other news, and some of you that are not up here in the northern Midwest type states probably won't understand, But Monday is the 50th anniversary of the Edmund Fitzgerald's sinking on the Great Lakes. Um, Now, I've mentioned the Edmund Fitzgerald before, and I'm just going to mention this quickly. I'm going to pull up the song here if you know what I'm talking about. So, it was a freighter on the Great Lakes. Back in 1975, it sank up in Lake Superior after hitting basically a hurricane, basically a giant snow squall storm in the middle of November. 1975, it sank. All 29 people lost their lives, and um, they changed a whole bunch of shipping regulations because of it. So here's a little bit of the song. I'm not going to play it all because obviously copyright.
The legend lives on from the Chippewa on down of the big lake they call Gitchagumi. The lake, it is said, never gives up her dead when the skies of November turn gloomy. With a load of iron ore, 26,000 tons more than the Edmund Fitzgerald weighed empty. That good ship and true was a bone to be chewed when the gales of November came early.
So there's been, well, it happens every year where basically the snow squalls kick up the storms in the Great Lakes and the weather starts changing in November. It causes drastic changes on the lakes and can cause treacherous uh, conditions to the point it sinks a 300 plus foot freighter, which is absolutely nuts.
Then later that night when the ship's bell rang, could it be the north wind they'd been feeling? And every man knew as the captain did too, 'twas the witch of November come stealing. Afternoon came, it was freezing rain in the face of a hurricane west wind.
Now, from what I remember, the winds were like 75 miles an hour plus out on the lakes when this actually took place. Let me see if I can find the good part here.
They might have split up for 2 hours.
I'm looking for one specific lyric. Hold on.
Does anyone know where the love of God goes when the waves turn the minutes to hours? The searchers all say they'd have made Whitefish Bay if they'd put 15 more miles behind her.
To put into perspective here, Whitefish Bay. Let me pull up maps here if I can do this on the fly. Whitefish Bay has been known to be the shelter just before the Sault Ste. Marie locks going into what is it? Lake Huron. So let me stop that for a second, and I'll share the maps here, and I'll show you. So there's Michigan, right? Okay, Lake Superior. Whitefish Point, on the very tip of the northern peninsula of Michigan. That's a critical point. Like, once you've passed that, you're pretty much home free to the locks. So this is Whitefish Bay down here. This chunk of land shields you from the winds that come westward. They sunk somewhere around here. Technically more out here in the middle of the lake rather than along the coast, but yeah, that's about where they sank, just before Whitefish Point. Whitefish Bay being down here. Then you go through the locks down into Huron and so forth. But yeah, hurricane west wind, 75 miles an hour plus, headed eastward, just ripped them up big time. Let me go back to the song here. If you are curious about the Edmunds Fitzgerald, there was a whole thing on Local 4 Detroit about a 2-hour documentary about it, which is actually pretty fascinating.
They might have split up or they might have capsized. They may have broke deep and took water. And all that remains is the faces and the names of the wives and the sons and the daughters. Water Mansion and farther below Lake Ontario. Remembered. As the Mariners all below Lake Ontario takes in what Lake Erie can send her.
There's another line I'm looking for here. So there's a church down in Detroit that had basically a funeral for all these people. And they rang the bells there 29 times, and they still do it every year from what I'm aware. Yeah, here you go.
Parade in the Maritime. In a musty old hall in Detroit, they prayed in the Maritime Sailors Cathedral. The church bell chimed till it rang 29 times for each man on the Edmund Fitzgerald. The legend lives on from the Chippewa on down of the big lake they call Gitchagumi. Superior, they said, never gives up her dead when the gales of November come early.
Yeah. So look up that song. It's The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald by Gordon Lightfoot, if you want to hear the whole thing. Obviously, I can't play the whole thing because of copyright and such. But that gives me chills every time I hear it. And being from the Midwest here, I guess you can call Michigan Midwest, might as well be. Um, that's a pretty well-known ship up here. And obviously, being from Michigan, we take our sailing pretty serious. Um, there is a channel that I um, am subscribed to called Big Old Boats. And it's a channel dedicated to all ships that have ever sank really anywhere, but predominantly on the uh, Great Lakes. Let me share that here. So yeah, I sit here and listen to the videos while I'm at work, and there's quite a few going back. They got everything from the Titanic to the Britannica to the Edmund Fitzgerald. What's the other one? It's the Edmund Fitzgerald's sister ship. It's Carl D. Bradley, I think. Or the J.D. Morrell. Either way, it's a very interesting channel. Kind of heart-wrenching at times, but when you have that kind of a job, it's as to be expected. I think around Halloween, they tend to focus on ghost ships, which is kind of cool. If you're into that thing. Dana B says, my nephew was lucky to dive to the Titanic. That's wild. So I'm going to go ahead and play this, at least part of it anyway. This is the story of the Edmund Fitzgerald.
Three tries to smash the champagne on the nose of the ship. That's considered a bad omen. And then it takes him a long time to finally squeeze the boat into the river, really, Detroit River. Much longer than expected. It slams across the other side, it smashes the other side, smashes back. One guy from Toledo.
My one regret, being the son of a Laker, is that my mother assumed the burden of raising 4 children, 4 boys, virtually by herself.
Why do we not know the sailors? The answer is they're not home, they're on a boat. 9 months out of the year, they're sailing the Great Lakes. So even if they live next to you, you wouldn't see them. They're not running your PTO, your Rotary Club, or your Little League baseball team. They're on the lakes.
Your mom, that must have been a lot.
Yes, and Mom did not drive, and she was raising 7 kids. So, yeah, kids at school didn't understand, why my dad wasn't around.
If I'm not mistaken, this is the cathedral that they rang the bells in when they sank. I remember correctly.
And I said, well, he's got a job, just like everybody, most dad, he just happened to work on a ship and not on the farm or in factory or like that was just his job.
When my dad was home for a short time in the winter that the lakes were frozen, he was lost. He didn't take a part-time job or anything. He just sat around the house. He couldn't wait to get back out on the water. So consequently, the 4 of us never got to know him as closely as we would have liked. He took care of us. He made sure we were well cared for and well provided for, sent me to college, all that stuff. So, but I would have liked more of his time just to be with him.
Pay was very good back then because the unions did a good job keeping the pay up. A lot of these guys could get overtime.
That's another thing. Just quickly mention, like, what the fuck happened to all the unions? I know there's still some around, but workers are not as united in their trades as they used to be. Just say.
A deckhand at age 22 could make 3 or 4 times what a teacher made in their hometown. So it was a good deal.
A deckhand could make 3 or 4 times the wage of a teacher? So that's like the equivalent of like $120,000 a year, give or take. Holy shit. No wonder you're able to raise 4 kids. And that's a deckhand. That's not even like first mate or navigator or captain. Shit. Then you wonder why we're fucked. I'm sorry, like this is going off on a tangent here. You wonder why the fuck we're not. Jesus. That's infuriating. No wonder people are pissed.
And these guys did well. They could afford a cabin on Lake Huron. They could afford to put their kids through the state school system here in Michigan with 15 state universities. The American dream was embodied in these people, and it really worked.
As it turned out, someone had left the ship who worked in the galley, and they needed a porter, essentially to take care of our passengers. I was in class at Bowling Green and was called out of the class, took the call, and they said, if you can be in Toledo by 5 o'clock at the docks, the job is yours. I was in such a hurry to get to the ship. So the only photo I have of me on board the Fitzgerald is the one that shows me standing at the rail in my Cook whites and my black dress shoes. I felt like I was really doing something important. Again, I was working hard to make my father proud of me.
Again, felt like he was doing something important. Nowadays, you don't have that. Like, okay, how many of you here are working and have a job? Now, put a 1 in chat if you feel that your job is important. Like, actually significantly important to society, not just like an everyday job. Well, Nightwing, I was expecting that one, considering where you work. But generally speaking, I would think most everyday people don't think that their job matters. Or if it does, they can at least easily be replaced. Now, granted, when you worked on the lakes, it was first come, first serve. People were fighting for positions on these boats. But there was a certain pride with that type of a fight, of position. Like, you wanted to be proud of working on the lakes. You wanted to be proud of your ship. You wanted to, not many ones in chat. I'll just say that,
but I was making pretty good money while doing it by 1960s standards. For a kid 19 years old doing fulfilling work like that and meeting these remarkable crewmates, each of whom had a story to tell, a fascinating life. In the pecking order, deckhands and porters, we were about the same level, not very high. And my first day on the Fitzgerald, the cook told me I had to peel an entire bag of onions for dinner. I did what I was told, and because I emerged from the pantry where the onions were with red eyes and tears on my face, and that's how I served my first meal. And I knew that this was part of a hazing ritual they do, and I figured my dad might have even put them up to it. He was on another ship elsewhere in the fleet, but they talk.
Let me pause it there. They said that the average wage of a teacher, they were making 3 times that as a deckhand. So average yearly wage for a teacher in 1960, and I'll put in Michigan to be specific. So the average yearly wage for a teacher in Michigan was $5,000 to $5,600 a year based on full time. So 3 times that. So 15,000 a year. So let me do some conversion here. Hold on. We'll say 15,000 a year in 1960. Holy fucking shit. I wasn't too bad on the math. So they said a deckhand on the Fitzgerald or on the lakes was making 3 times the wage of a teacher, which is 5,000 a year. So times 3 is 15,000 a year in 1960, which had the purchasing power of $164,000. And in terms of today, you would need a 994.51% increase in your wage today to meet that. And that was with an average inflation rate of 3.75%, which isn't bad at all. Holy shit! $165,000 just to be a basic deckhand in 1960. Okay, minimum wage was $2.50. Okay, hourly wage in 1960 of $2.50 is approximately 27.36. So $27.36 today. And I'm over here making $18.50. Excuse me? I'm sorry. Something's wrong. Okay, 265, even worse. Let's do 265 just because y'all said 265. 29 bucks an hour. The average wage. What the fuck? Today's prices are about 10.95 times higher as average prices were in 1960. Oh! And they say, oh, just work harder. Fuck you. No wonder people are upset. Anyway, I'll be right back. Y'all sit here and think about how much this shit sucks. I'll be right back. So, anyway, I just had a thought. So, if it's 10 times the inflation rate or prices of goods is 10, almost 11 times higher, that's the equivalent of a $100 bill being $10 in terms of the actual value of a $100 bill. Am I wrong in my math there? Because money has lost 10 times its value or 11 times its value. Is my math wrong on that? Which means I'm only making $1.80 an hour? Fuck, man. Actually, no, not even $1.80. $1.40. So, Yeah. Anyway, continuing on with the documentary here about the Fitzgerald and not about the economy.
Along about halfway through my season on the Fitz, Dad was transferred over to the Fitz to become chief engineer. In other words, the second best job in the company. The day my dad was transferred over and came aboard, he came on board looking for me, knowing I was working in the galley. And he had just come aboard from shore where all this iron ore dust collects. So he had it all over his shoes. And I'm mopping in the galley. And he walks in looking for his son. And I see red boot prints every couple feet as he approaches. And I yelled at my own dad. I said, "Get out of my galley." And he kind of smiled and he backed off a little bit. And I always joke that it was the only time in Great Lakes maritime history that a lowly porter told off the chief engineer and lived to work another day. But he got a big kick out of that. So that was the most fun I think I ever had, was telling my dad, "Get out."
If you can't read small print anymore because of vision problems.
Stupid commercials.
Men were among the hardest working, most dedicated people I've ever been around. Speaking specifically of my crew in 1963, but that was unchanged in 1975. My dad knew all of them over the years, and they were a special bunch.
I talked to guys who were on that crew, and they said it was by far the best crew on the Great Lakes. Man, work together. You got to work together to make this thing work. And are you different? Of course you're different. You're 29 guys.
Let me, so we'll do 1975 wages, okay? Just for my... So we'll say it's 1975, the year the Fitz sank. It was 6 times what you're making. And that's with a 3.6% inflation. So we'll do average wage. So you were making about 7,000. Yeah, okay. So average wage in 1975 was approximately 51,000 a year. That's about where we're at right now. So what you're saying is we have to survive on 2025 prices with 1975 wages? That's bullshit. Yeah. Sorry about this. It's just like, that's infuriating. We're basically making the same amount we were back in 75, but with the cost of things being 500 times the amount.
But we're on this ship for 9 months. How do you want it to go? Blaine Wilhelm, handsome guy, oiler, was scared of the engineering test. Was about to take it again in the next off season. He is the father of Heidi Raven.
I guess they played poker on the ship. I don't know, but he he had this thing where he would never spend his change. And he'd have a coffee can and he'd just throw all his change in there the whole time he was on the ship. But when he'd get home, he'd split it up and give it to his children, just for, so we could go buy candy or whatever. I was only 12 when he died. I don't have a huge amount of memories of him, but I know he liked to read. He read a lot. One of our favorite pictures we have, the mom and dad are sitting in the backyard, just sitting in the grass with their backs to the camera, just sharing the newspaper. He liked to read because when he was at home, he was home. He was very much there. There's a lake near where we grew up that I found out years later, him and his siblings and cousins and used to go to a lot of times. So in the summertime when he was home on vacation, he would take us out there a lot. But first we had to go pick blueberries so he could have blueberry pie when he got home. I didn't really know a whole lot. All I know is he worked in the engine room, how they just kept the engine running and making sure they were greased.
In the engine room, the oilers and the wipers had very tough jobs. And down in the engine room, if it's 90 degrees outside, it's 120. You don't put your hands on metal without gloves, or else you leave your skin there. These are guys who were not supposed to get along. The engine crew usually does not get along with the pilot house on most ships. You got 3/4 are World War II vets, and 1/4 are guys who don't want to go to Vietnam. With the long hair and the lamb chops and all that, they don't usually get along in 75. These guys got along famously. Captain Ernest McSorley was considered simply the best captain on the Great Lakes. And you think I'm making all this stuff up. I talked to his rivals. I talked to people on other ships. And they said everyone knew he was the best in the Great Lakes. There wasn't much question.
Hold on. 1970s wages was not high. Something is wrong. That was just, I might have misread it here. So let's see. Average wage. $19.75. So average earnings of an employee was about $4.82 in October of 75. So 485 in today's wage. That would be $29.21 in today's purchasing power. So yeah. You'd be basically having to make $30 an hour to have the same purchasing power. Yes, Homestead, $4.85 an hour. So let's just do my wage here. So I'm doing, again, I'm sorry to go on to the economy stuff here, but I'm doing 1850. In 1975 wage equivalent. Let's see here. Come on, computer. Don't be stupid. My computer's being slow, so hold on. So the salary I would be making for what I make today in 1975 is $6,837 a year. So let's go back to we'll do 1975 is how much an hour. So in 1975, as a warehouse worker, I would be making $3.29. So we are basically, so I'm about $40,000 a year, give or take a bit. Pretty average, right? So I'm basically having to survive on the equivalent of $3.29 an hour on the wage or on the inflation price of $30 an hour. If that makes sense. I may not have worded that right. Basically, prices are at 10 times the amount. So you would have been making as a deckhand on the Edmund Fitzgerald 10 times the amount, or the equivalent of 10 times the amount of what I make today as a basic job, which is fucking ridiculous.
About that. He was considered the best in rough weather. That matters, obviously. He delivered more and faster than anyone else. He was very aggressive in the wheelhouse. He never once backed off and laid anchor during a storm. He was known to go, go, go. And he was considered a great guy on top of all that. His crew would follow him from ship to ship to ship, including his last assignment on the Emma Fitzgerald. And the young guys and the old guys all loved that man, truly. So McSorty gets a bonus once he's passed his quota, and he's passed it. And his wife, Nellie, was in a healthcare facility, I think, for cancer. It's all secondhand at that point. So he was trying to get enough money to pay for her healthcare after he retired. That was going to be his last trip. It would be 5 of his colleagues' last trip.
Be Charming says, and working 10 times harder than you. My point being is, the wages have not kept up for the cost of things today. So it's not a matter of they work 10 times harder. Yeah, you may have been making $30 an hour on the Edmunds Fitzgerald back then in 1975, whatever. Rightfully so, being on the, ship. But my point is, you could be at basic starting level at $30 an hour. And have a family and a house and raise 4 kids. The point is, the wages have not kept up with the pricing. No matter how you cut it.
This is their retirement run. I'm not making that up. It's crazy. So one more trip, not to be greedy, to pay for his wife's health care going forward. So this is a tack-on trip.
You're not a child. You're a man.
And here we go again with the ads.
I learned a lot by researching this book. One shocking fact is that talk to experienced Great Lakes sailors who've done both the Atlantic Ocean and the Great Lakes. John Hayes, 12 years in the Atlantic Ocean, 23 years in the Great Lakes. He said the Great Lakes are far more dangerous than the Atlantic Ocean, and it's not even close. And anybody who's done both will tell you that.
This area has come to be known as the Shipwreck Coast. In the area of Whitefish Point, there's roughly 200 shipwrecks just in this area alone. So it can be dangerous.
That's what I showed you on the maps earlier.
Any time of year.
The weather can change in an instant, and everything on the Great Lakes is wind driven.
Oh, it's horrible. We've been out where we're searching for shipwrecks, and it was fog and not a ripple on the water. And by the time we were coming back, we were going through 10-foot waves that one guy put a life jacket on, and we were almost hitting the ceiling.
Lows in the mid-50s. Northwest winds up to 5 miles per hour.
These are the old-fashioned radars. That's all they had back then.
Flood watch in effect until 8 p.m. this evening.
And you relied on these. These are the two things that the Edmund Fitzgerald lacked that night. Both the long and the short radars were knocked out.
It wouldn't be necessarily graphics or things like that. It would just be a text forecast, and then they would be on their way. And then as conditions changed during the voyage, either they would be radioed information or they wouldn't know.
The storms can really kick up very, very quickly here. It's not like saltwater in the sense that I think it maybe takes a little bit longer for those waves to get big and dramatic on the Atlantic or the Pacific.
And so you have these storms now with this Arctic air feeding in, but you have the relatively warm waters below. That air is warmer. That creates a more unstable environment, and it causes these storms to explode. And it's a very common phenomenon here in the fall, and the peak period is those first 2 weeks of November.
On Sunday, November 9th, when the Fitzgerald leaves, it is 70 degrees in Duluth.
So basically right now is when these winds are kicking up.
It's never 70 degrees in Duluth on November 9th. And they're in t-shirts. Guys are playing golf on land. You can see those guys play golf. Great day. That's bad news.
So here we are, 70.
So just for the record, we're supposed to be getting snow this weekend. So tomorrow and Monday, we're supposed to get our first snow here. So what does that mean for the Great Lakes up there? I'm just saying.
a.m. Monday, November 10th, 1975. This is the day that the Edmund Fitzgerald sank. Notice that that low has moved from Kansas all the way to the Great Lakes in just 24 hours. And notice these lines here. These are isobars, lines of constant.
So right up in here is Whitefish Bay. Right where I was pointing on the map. So this wind here, this line of different pressures here. The spiked being the cold and the rounded symbol here being the warm. That's the front colliding, and the Edmund Fitzgerald sank right about here. So do the math on that one.
pressure, all of these extra lines, that shows the explosive development of this low as it came into the Great Lakes. Again, that classic time of year where these storms just blossom over the Great Lakes because of the warmth of those waters. The storm continued north through the day. The wind shifted to the north and then the northwest, and the strongest wind was on the backside of this low. This is the moment, and this is the storm that sank the Edmund Fitzgerald.
So both ships, the Anderson and the Fitzgerald, start ahead of the lakes. They sail together the northern route. Instead of straight over Keweenaw, Whitefish Bay, they're going north for the protection of the shore.
So again, that's where I was pointing out on the map earlier.
And the winds. Here's where they turn down south. The red line is the Fitzgerald. They went around Michipicoten Island. Now the question is, they sailed too close to Caribou and 65 Shoal. If they did, they might have bottomed out there, damaged the hull, taken on water, and that's where the list might have started. One more thing about the northern route. By taking 14 more hours to go that direction instead of the straight shot across, you've given the storm a 14-hour head start. And McSorley did not know this, we know that.
So basically what he's explaining is, why did they go north rather than, say, from this point, or stay to the southern side of things along Copper Harbor and just head straight down? You would have cut your time drastically in half. So I don't know.
These two storms collide right in front of Whitefish Point at exactly the wrong place, at exactly the wrong time, and it was the only ship sailed too close to.
And just to point out the date that they put this together, 9/11 or 11/9 rather, the day before. Just saying.
Caribou and 65 Shoal. If they did, they might have bottomed out there, damaged the hull, taken on water, and that's where the list might have started. One more thing about the northern route. By taking 14 more hours to go that direction instead of the straight shot across, you've given the storm a 14-hour head start. And McSorley did not know this, we know that. But these two storms collide right in front of Whitefish Point at exactly the wrong place, at exactly the wrong time, and it was the only ship in that area at that hour. If you went straight shot, you probably would have made it 14 hours earlier.
It was a bad call in a storm that went way faster than they thought. So the wind direction flipped on them as they got way up by Michipicoten. They were in the eye of the storm, and when it flipped on them, now it was building from Fort William or Thunder Bay, Ontario, the full length of Lake Superior. So now you have 30-foot waves that are meeting them before they can get to Whitefish, and they thought they could get there faster, and they didn't.
The waves are coming west-east, and you're going south.
Like put that into perspective. Measure out 30 feet. That's about the length of a telephone pole. Size waves. Like, that's ridiculous.
All right, down the eastern shore of Lake Superior. So the waves are coming like this, and you're going like this. All right, 729 feet by 75 feet. That is not where you want to be. So these guys are very aggressive. They're very unaccustomed to sharing anything on the radio, and yet McSorley does. He said, I've got a starboard list. This is now serious. And he's confessing to him that I'm in trouble, basically, and lets on more than he normally would. And the Anderson picks up on it and knows they have to help. Once he knew he had a list, which means you're tilting to the right side, the starboard side. You're probably taking on water. The load might have shifted. That's a bad place to be on a ship. He decides to wait for an hour, basically, for the Anderson to catch up. This is a rational decision because he's lost his long radar, his short radar, the lighthouse at Whitefish Point. The light is out at Whitefish Point. That's the one lighthouse every sailor wants to see. And even the radio beacon that signals you where you are from the lighthouse, that is also out. So he has no radar, no lighthouse, no beacon. He's blind, truly. He might even have the wrong map at that point. So he wisely waits, in some ways, for the Anderson to catch up to guide him in. But while that's happening, his ship is filling with water. And all he needed was one more hour, that hour, to get to Whitefish Bay. He's talking to the Anderson, and the Anderson says, "How are you making out with those problems of yours?" And Captain McSorty says, and I quote, "We are holding our own."
That is the last transmission of the Edmund Fitzgerald. We are holding our own. Talk about creepy final words.
Classic stoic captain, not going to complain, not going to panic. We're going to be okay. That's what he thinks.
One vessel was in radio contact. Have they been able to give you any information?
No, in fact, the commanding officer of the vessel was more surprised than we were, I believe. He was in radio communications with the vessel just before it went down, and they didn't report any immediate difficulty.
Oh, stupid ads.
He comes up on deck, he looks for the Fitzgerald, and Cooper cannot find him through binoculars or the radar, and they don't know where it went. So they start to search, they look, they can't find anything, they finally get to safety, and that's when they call the Coast Guard and said, "We need help looking for the ship. We don't know where it's at."
What time was the last time that you had any comms or that you noticed you had the Fitzgerald in front of you, over? 1900. 1900, he was approximately 15 miles from the high hump at Crisp Point. That's when I was talking to him. He was 15 miles from the land. I asked him how he was making out with his problem. He said he lost those vents and he had a lift, and he said he was holding his own. The last time I talked with him, he said he was holding his own, and that's the last time I lost contact after that. I estimated the waves for some of the big ones between 20 and 25 feet.
Maybe the Andersons' radars weren't quite working up to snuff after that storm. But in any case, Captain Cooper did keep radioing the Coast Guard. Eventually, the Coast Guard did ask the Anderson to turn around and head back out into the lake, which is not something I think that Captain Cooper was very excited about.
Yeah, you think you could cut it out and go back and take a look in the area, over? I'll go back and take a look, but God, I'm afraid that I'm going to take a hell of a beating out there on it. That would be good if you could turn around and head out that way, and we're going to try to get as many other vessels that can possibly get underway and proceed to that area. Over. Do you realize what the conditions are out there?
Cooper said there's no way he could have stopped the Anderson to pick up, people on a lifeboat. He couldn't have done it, but he went back because that was the spirit of what sailors do.
There was another ship, the William Clay Ford, went out.
So they said that the Anderson went back, went back because that's what you did on the lakes. Now there's a obligation to help a ship in need out on the lakes, and that's one of those regulations that was put in place because of the Fitzgerald. So if you hear a distress call, you have to go help. Otherwise, you can legally be held liable. Because if you see a ship sinking, off the side of your ship and you refuse to help, well, yeah, you're going to get chewed out later, legally and physically. So.
As well.
We're walking into the pilot house of the William Clay Ford. Here it is in all its glory. A very important ship, owned by the Ford Motor Company, of course. So that night, November 10th, 1975, Don Erickson is the captain.
It's funny they showed that picture.
Pilot house of the William Clay Ford. Here it is in all its glory. A very important.
So, just right about where this ship is at, there was another ship, just a Canadian ship that looked just like this, just this week, got beached right about that same position. Right on the border of the waters, if you could say that. U.S. Coast Guard got involved. Tugboats were out there today trying to free it. So we almost had another Edmund Fitzgerald just down here by Detroit, because that's the GM headquarters right there, or what was the GM headquarters at the time. So, yeah. History repeats itself.
ship owned by the Ford Motor Company, of course. So that night, November 10th, 1975, Don Erickson is the captain of the William Clay Ford. They've already anchored in Whitefish Bay. They finished a harrowing trip across Lake Superior. And then the Coast Guard asked them to go back out.
We had about 8 or 10 ships anchored in the bay. We talking to Anderson, says, well, he might go back out there. And so I'm thinking, well, if my son was on that ship, which I knew a lot of people on that ship, if my son was on that ship, I sure want some of my friends to come out and look for my son. So I asked the rest of the guys, you want to go out there? You think we should go out there? And every one of them says, well, whatever I wanted to do, they would do. So I says, well, get her underway. We'll get the engine ready, and we'll go out and we'll take a look. If my son was on...
Is it just me, or does this guy kind of look like Herschel from The Walking Dead?
On that ship, which I knew a lot of people on.
Don't get a HELOC or refinance.
Stupid ads.
I remember her being on the phone, trying to get anybody to tell her anything, and she couldn't get through to anybody. She even had the operator break into somebody's phone conversation. And I just remember curled up in a chair saying, Mom, I'm scared. The next time period is kind of a blur.
I was getting ready for bed about 11 o'clock Pacific time, and I kind of was half listening to Harry Reasoner on the news, and he's saying a Great Lakes vessel has been lost and is feared gone on Lake Superior.
An air and sea search is continuing for possible survivors of the Edmund Fitzgerald, a 729-foot ore carrier, which apparently broke apart and sunk last night on Lake Superior.
Back when the news actually reported the news.
And so I went out, paid a little more closer attention to the television, and he said it was Edmund Fitzgerald. And I remember what a crude graphic they had. They didn't have the sophisticated TV graphics that we take for granted today. And it was just almost like a kid's cartoon drawing of a ship tilted and sinking. And my heart sank along with it. I realized that if that ship is gone and nobody got off, then my uncle's gone. And hard as it was to believe that it could be the Fitzgerald, I sort of figured it might be, because in mid-November, not a lot of ships were still out. Many had already gone to winter dock. But the Fitz was always out there because it was another load to carry, another tonnage record to set. And so I fully expected the Fitzgerald to be out there. Now, I knew my dad wasn't on the Fitz at that time, but I knew my uncle was. Everybody was checking, have you heard anything? Have you know anything? And of course, you're still clinging to that slim chance that, as violent as that storm was, that they somehow got into a boat, one of the boats got free and they got off it. But by the end of the 11th, most that hope was gone.
Even though the Coast Guard now considers the Fitzgerald lost, officers continue to plot the area where debris was sighted in a search for possible survivors. Officials, however, say it would be impossible to live more than 4 hours in the 49-degree waters of Lake Superior.
Ralph G. Walton, oiler.
If you look at the ship's bell that is on display at Whitefish Point Museum, it says Ralph G. Walton. And until he died, I did not know his first name was Ralph, because growing up, he was always Uncle Grant. He only wanted to be known by his middle name. And it was only when he died that I realized his name was Ralph. Uncle Grant was what unified us all. He was our reason to get together. He was the guy whose personality drove it all. He was one of the happiest people I've ever met. I mean, laughing all the time, always had a joke. My father was much more serious about his vocation. I don't want to suggest my Uncle Grant was not, but he was not a lifer like my dad. So he enjoyed his time on the lakes. He enjoyed the camaraderie of his shipmates. My dad was 55 at the time of the accident. He had lost his brother, and he had lost his love for what he was doing, and he retired. He left the lakes. I couldn't believe it. In hindsight, of course, I realize now how much it aided him that his brother, no doubt, who might have gotten his job with Dad's help and recommendation, that felt some responsibility for my uncle's demise. And of course, we all tried to tell him no, could not have possibly known. But he just didn't have the heart for it anymore. From a man who could not wait during the off season to get back to the ship and fit out for a new season, to a guy who wanted nothing to do with it.
I'm going to go ahead and leave it there. You guys can look up this documentary on Local 4, Detroit. Let me see here. If you go to click on Detroit Local 4 WDIV, you can find that documentary. They have their own YouTube channel. I'm not going to sit here all night and watch it, at least not with you guys. I might go watch the rest of it. But if anything, this documentary has shown us, one, the economics side of things was better in terms of pay. People cared about people a little bit more back then. And to not take life for granted. I don't know what else to say. I'm probably not going to have any of my regulars up tonight. Maybe tomorrow if I feel like it, but probably not. I'm getting pretty tired myself. I've had a long day. Gonna be ending it here. Yeah. So, I will probably see y'all next weekend, depending on how things go. And I'm gonna go catch some sleep here. So y'all have a good night, and stay safe and such. So, 101 out.